What's up, kids? It's time for some Leafs Convo podcast. We're going to do it quick style. What should we call the abbreviated Leafs Combos? Leafs Coffee Combo? Leafs Convo over coffee? Leafs Express? What do you think? Let me know in the YouTube comments section or on Twitter at NormanJamesTLC. Mike in Buffalo's ready to go. We'll talk about the Leafs and Rielly, that 4-1 win. Looking good. The Leafs Convo starts now. And here is Mike Jello. How about those Leafs and Rielly? They were able to get the game in despite all of the crazy weather in that part of the country. And a 4-1 decision in favor of the Maple Leafs, exercising some demons from the last time they were in those parts. Michael, what say you?
Good morning, Norman. It was a complete departure from last month where they go into Raleigh against Curtis McElhinney, and 29 shots later, in the first period. I mean, I'm sure if Freddie Anderson had a good sleep that night because he was overworked, but last night the Leafs came out. I thought were really energetic, really up-tempo in the first period, took the play to the Hurricanes, got a goal from the fourth line with Tyler Ennis scoring, I think it was his fifth of the year. And they really, even after Carolina tied the game, they came back and got that game-winning goal where Rielly centers it off of Dougie Hamilton into the net. They came back right away. So really, even though the game in terms of who was the better team and who was dominating was never in doubt, and then they just extended the lead and won 4-1.
This is the Leafs Convo podcast. Norman James with Mike Jello. The Leafs 21-9-1 on the season. A spectacular record. Still, 43 points, 6 behind the league leaders from Tampa Bay, who they face in Tampa Bay on Thursday. Michael, do you think the Leafs have revved up their engines to the point where they're ready to go into where the Lightning call home and give them a run for their money?
I think they'll be keyed up for that game. I think they realize it's a test because, they may be second overall in the league, but it's really not going to matter too much if they stay in second place, they're going to be playing the third place team in the Atlantic. And the only way that they can play a wild card team in the first round is to catch the Lightning, who just keep going. I mean, Louis Domingue as their backup goaltender has not dropped the ball. In fact, he was second star of the week last week. So, they're getting great performances out of everybody like Stamkos, who scored a hat trick, and it's going to be a measuring stick game for the Leafs.
Absolutely. Morgan Rielly with his 10th goal in the 4-1 win over the Hurricanes. William Nylander on the board now, 2 assists, 16 minutes of ice time, roughly. He was almost 70% in faceoffs, winning the bulk of them. You know what? That was obviously his best game of the season. He hasn't played too many, but good for him. I know that Mike Babcock was excited about it, but the head coach also warning fans and media alike that it's still a process, and Willie has a ways to go to get to his elite status.
Yeah, the thing I liked the most was the balance of the three lines. Now, obviously, Hyman was out in the first game of the suspension, and Connor Brown moved up with Tavares and Marner. But you keep Kapanen and Janssen with Matthews, and you have Marleau, Kadri, and Nylander as a third line. I don't know many third lines better than that. So, I mean, I could see Babcock keeping him there for a while. Everybody assumed that Nylander was going to go back playing with Austin Matthews, and maybe that'll be the case. But honestly, I think that third line provides a lot of matchup problems for the opposition.
What do you think of John Tavares, continuing to pump in goals? Austin Matthews, doing his thing. Remember, Austin and his start was just so exceptional, sensational, almost otherworldly that he's probably going to have a bit of a run here where he's contributing in other ways besides a ton of points. And certainly that's okay because, as you mentioned, Mike, the balance is there. There's enough scoring throughout that you're going to have some of the support players take on the role of leadership offensively from time to time. And that's what you want. The last thing you want to rely on when you aspire to be a champion is a small group of players to carry the weight offensively and have everybody else just, hope that they can help out. In this case, the star of the game could be anybody within that lineup, and that's a testament to the balance of the team. Yet, as we spoke about in our last podcast, clearly this team, while it does have so many incredible traits, it still needs to level up. And, I don't want to put a a damper on the positive conversation we're having, Mike. But we'll find out tomorrow, just what the Leafs have in terms of matching up with the best teams in the league and potentially what they don't have.
Well, first, Mike Babcock should lower Austin Matthews' ice time because he's not maintaining that goal per game pace. So I think he should be benched.
Nice one, Mike.
But
Careful.
and yesterday I pointed it out while watching the game and on Twitter. I mean, we cannot underemphasize the need for this team to, I think, have a little bit of sandpaper and pushback, as we've talked about in the last few convos. But yesterday, the one time you saw that was, I think it was Clark Bishop, who is a forward for the Hurricanes, throttle Nazem Kadri into the bench. And Kadri comes back and wastes, I think it was Brock McGinn. That's what I call pushback. You don't need to drop the gloves. You just need to basically tell the other team, if you try to take a run at us, we're going to take a run at you. It's mutually assured destruction. So, when we're talking about this team being really good, they are, but they can be better. And that's the task in front of Kyle Dubas before February 25th.
I had some conversations on social media because, remember, Twitter is the place. As much as we want to lament it and criticize it, it's essential for our communication and getting the word out about what we do, and obviously having what we say and the product we create resonate. I had some conversations, and they were constructive. People still can't equate grittiness and a level up physically with anything when we suggest it with anything other than a couple of knuckle draggers out there punching and getting suspended. We're not talking about that, Mike.
No, I mean, those players are an anachronism. They do not exist, and there are very few of them that exist in the league anymore. It has to, a player has to have more than just one purpose. And if you're talking about a fourth line guy, even if it's Ryan Reeves can keep up with the pace of the current game. He's actually not a bad skater for being a really big guy. And, he doesn't have a ton of skill, but he's not a hindrance out there. I'm just saying, and I don't think the Leafs need that enforcer. They don't need Matt Martin back. Although, it would be nice at particular moments to have somebody out there to exact some retribution. I realize that's not the game anymore. I'm just an old fogey. But when it comes to the game right now, you need players who can play often and provide that particular aspect of the game. And I do think that, Babcock realizes that. I've heard some commentary that said Babcock said that what I thought was a ridiculous statement about the toughness being their power play, send a message to Kyle Dubas that they actually need guys who can play with toughness before the deadline. And maybe that's the case. He sent signals before through the media, and maybe this is another attempt.
Yeah, I caught something on Leafs Nation Network, Mike, and you're in the United States, so you don't get to see Leafs Nation Network, eh? Like it's propaganda for the team, but it's good watching, and it plays the game in a half hour, and they replay the full contests over and over again, and all these once a Leaf, these interviews. There's a really incredible interview with Daryl Sittler and Cujo. It really is touching, and they get into the whole Daryl Sittler, Terry Fox thing, and it'll bring a tear to your eye. I mean, it's just too bad you can't watch it. Maybe you can catch some of that stuff on the MapleLeafs.com, but what I'm getting at is Mike Babcock had mentioned something to, it might have been Paul Hendrick who asked the question about the power play being the toughness. And Mike Babcock seemed to take a step back from that, his original statement that, the power play was what was going to help the team overcome, any physical limitations. But I think he did acknowledge that the team does need to enhance and level up the same way that we've been talking about it, Mike. And, I think a lot of times people want to, equate the youth analytics and players who are agreeable financially with, creating a team that's going to work. I mean, that's fantasy GM stuff, but in reality, that got to go beyond it. And Kyle Dubas is maturing as a general manager, and Mike Babcock is showing humility as a head coach. These guys are not having an about face, but they are taking a look in the mirror and asking themselves, what can we do to help make this team even better, level up, enhance, and take the next step towards winning a Stanley Cup? Because that is entirely what it's about. And that test in Tampa Bay will be a lot of fun. We got to go, Mike, but Morgan Rielly, a beautiful pass to Andreas Janssen in the first period in Raleigh. Andreas Janssen couldn't score. I mean, it was a tough one. If he did, it would have been one of the goals of the week. But beautiful stuff from Rielly. 33 points in 31 games. This guy leads the NHL in defenseman scoring. Great coming out of his own zone. Strong on the puck. Like, do you think legitimately, I mean, we could see a Toronto Maple Leaf win the Norris Trophy here? I mean, it's still early, but this is a guy, he's probably giving the Leafs the best chance since Boreas Salmi.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think if he keeps up this pace, he's going to be in the mix. I think first of all, Brendan Shanahan and Kyle Dubas should send a Christmas present to Lou Lamoriello for getting Morgan Rielly on that contract. Because if Morgan Rielly was a UFA this year, just think of the situation that they would be in with Gardner with and then with the Matthews and Marner contracts. I mean, they're lucky that they got him locked up for another few years at a very reasonable $5 million, and you always have to factor that in with the machinations of fitting players underneath the cap. So they're Nazem Kadri at $4.5 million and Morgan Rielly at $5 million are a
Yes.
godsends to the Leafs right now. But right now, yeah, I mean he's in the mix. I mean, do I expect him to maintain a point per game pace? I don't know, because Erik Karlsson, that's what he did in his prime. I'd love to see it, because I think it would be a sign of a new level for Morgan Rielly, a level that I was told when he was drafted he could potentially reach, because he was a premier offensive defenseman. And we've seen under Babcock that he worked on his defense the first year, had him penalty kill, had him play in defensive shutdown roles to make him a more
Sure.
two-way defenseman. And now you see that paying off.
Absolutely, Mike. And he's clearly a focal point when it comes to the power play, even just being on a shift with a Mitch Marner or whomever. He is situated with some of the best defensive players this league has right now, and this league has seen in quite some time. And when you add what he can bring offensively to all of the other perks that are at his disposal, this could be a just a magical year for Morgan Rielly. I mean, he's over a point per game. I mean, a lot of these guys are over a point per game, and it's an amazing thing. And unlike teams in the past where you're expecting the bubble to burst, I don't think it's going to happen with this squad. I've predicted 115 points. Do I think they're going to win the President's Trophy? I don't think so. I still think they can win the Stanley Cup if they make a couple of adjustments. Real quick before we go, I wanted to get to Julian Bronk, who shared something with us on Twitter. He thinks Andreas Janssen is going to get an offer sheet for $10 million if he keeps playing like this. I don't know if he's saying that in jest, but he's trying to make the point that the Leafs won't be able to afford him at some point. Just wants to throw that hot take out there before someone else does.
Well, and I know that you retweeted it, and I read it and retweeted it as well. Kevin McGrant's piece in the Toronto Star talking about not Marner, not Matthews, because I think if somebody offers an offer sheet to either one of them, the Leafs are just going to basically, if it's signed at 12 noon, at 12:01, they're going to tell the other team to go, you know what, and match the offer sheet. But for somebody who's a player who's coming off his ELC or coming off a 1-year deal in the case of Janssen, and they have a pretty big year, a team could offer that player $3-4 million on an offer sheet, and that might be tough Leafs to match. That's why I think it increases the possibility with the bevy of young forwards that they have, that they make that trade for the defenseman, because I think a Kapanen or a Janssen could be included in that. Or maybe if it's a bigger defenseman like a Alex Pietrangelo, which has been rumored, maybe Nylander is if this is a brief stop and he gets moved, anything is possible. I mean, the whole thing here is the Leafs have cap room. They have the ability to add talent. They have all their draft picks, as Kyle Dubas said. They have prospects. This is the time to make your move and try to win a Stanley Cup.
Before the salary cap, my friends, you could keep everybody, and the Leafs would pay them like crazy and still wouldn't get the job done. Now you can't keep everybody. It effing sucks, but it's part of the deal, and the Leafs have to decide who they're going to go forward with and who they're going to use as assets to accrue other assets that they need more than the assets they have. And, it's going to be fun to see how it all plays out. My deal here is that the Leafs have the opportunity to win a Stanley Cup this season and for several seasons to come. Remember, Mike Babcock believes this group has a 5 to 7 year window, and wouldn't it be a shame in 7 years' time to look back and say this team won no Stanley Cups. Mike Babcock, for all of the great teams he had in Detroit, only won one. And, it's just luck of the draw, the way things play out. There were a lot of competitive teams. This Leafs team, forget about the drought that the organization's going through Stanley Cup-wise. This group could win 2 to 3 the same way the Kings won a pair, Chicago won 3, Sidney Crosby and the group, not the current group he has right now, but Sidney Crosby's won 3. The current group in Pittsburgh has won 2. There's no reason. And forget about what you believe, whether there's a hoax on the Leafs, the franchise, or the crest is garbage and the Leafs will never win a Stanley Cup again. This group can win multiple Stanley Cups, but it still needs to level up and make some enhancements. Mike, I hope you feel better, buddy. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thanks, Norman.
That epi, quick and dirty, to the point, lots of fun. Thanks for joining us at Norman James TLC, at Mike in Buffalo, at David Nastico 200 if you want to get out our gift master. He does a nice job for the Convo Twitter account, at the Leafs Convo. You can also at Kyle Outridge TLC. He does a terrific job profiling the prospects within the Leafs pipeline, and he's got another one coming out very soon, so stay tuned for that. The Leafs Convo at gmail.com is the way you can reach me, Norman James, directly. We can talk about sponsorship opportunities. We talk about the Leafs leveling up and enhancing their game. We're trying to do the same thing. Our podcast, we need some sponsorship. If anybody has any ideas for me, the Leafs Convo at gmail.com is the way to at me. We'll get it done. For Mike in Buffalo, I'm Norman James. We'll talk to you soon. The Leafs Convo is out.